welcome to Innovator. It's one of the latest show from powered by Montreal New Tech, and what we want to do is take a bit of time, and talk about people and organizations who are changing the world through innovative ideas, technology, and science. So I'm your host, Valentine, coming you live from, well, essentially a cottage, enjoying the beautiful scenery of winter Canada. I hope everything's fine on your end as well. Today we have a special guest. We have actually an interesting lineup of guests. Let me get into it. So we'll start with who should we talk about? So biotech is something quite interesting these days, right? Of course, we hear about it in the context of a vaccine, but it has so much more potential than that. And rather than just tell you about what are those ideas behind biotech, we decided to have Xavier-Henri Hervé, who you probably know him from District 3, where he's the executive director there. But that's not enough. We also want to give you a perspective from people actually working on a startup. And to that end, we're lucky to have Ludovic Live and Joël Pelletier, who they're working both on Affinity Instruments. It's a startup that's been quite busy. I heard recently they sold some of their instruments to NASA. Clearly, some people have been busy during the pandemic. Without further ado, let's start with Xavier. Hi, Xavier. How are things on your end?
Good. Hi. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. So, how are you dealing with the confinement and the pandemics on your end?
The frank answer is I hate it, but I guess like everyone else, it'll be over soon.
It is, and partly because all of that innovation that we're doing in science and and tech, clearly. So apparently you've been busy. You're not content on working on District 3. That is not enough. That's not enough work. You decided to launch a new project, the BioHub. Can you tell me a bit more?
Yeah, you're correct about one thing. Till a few months ago, biology was still an old concept in people's head. They thought of biology as they knew it from already a couple of thousand years ago. But COVID has changed that. Now, the word DNA and RNA is on the 6 o'clock news. So it's definitely been a major shift. And yes, we're launching the BioHub, which is a very unique ecosystem. There's not many places like this across the world. The purpose of the BioHub is to give startups, bio startups, a place to start developing their products. There's also a bunch of other services and the normal entrepreneurial assistance that we do at District 3, but here is
A push to the next level for bio. So I have a little warning for your audience. We have a video of the outside world of what the BioHub can look like. So be careful. It's a bit like what you have in your house apartment, but it's bigger, it's wider. Dennis, can you roll it out?
It's meant to be a place where people collide. Why do we want them to collide? Is because that's how they find solutions to the problems that they're passionate about. District 3 was actually the idea of students. One day I was introduced by the Dean of Engineering to 4 students who came from very different faculties, but who shared all the same passion, which was innovating, finding solutions that weren't found before. And they knew that meant they needed a place to meet, where multiple disciplines would meet, where different sources of knowledge would meet, in a place where all that could collide, meet, build, and find solutions. So the BioHub is very unique in Montreal, is that it's allowing this environment for people with ideas and for tech startups and co-founders. Very rare worldwide, actually. You could probably say there's no more than 20 such spaces in the world, especially dedicated to startups. And the BioHub is about that. It's about the very beginning of the funnels where people have ideas and they need to see, does it work? If it works, will it be something that's economically feasible? If it's economically feasible, the big challenge is will people adopt it? And we have to start somewhere, and the place to start, the start line, so to speak, of that race, is the BioHub here at Concordia.
Wow, was that outside? Was it green? Okay, wow, I totally missed it. So, okay, let's get started to it because while I was watching that, it just makes me think Montreal has such a interesting history of investing in technology. I can think of probably gaming, AI, definitely recently. They both got an incredible amount of momentum in the industry. Can we say biotech is kind of the next big thing, and how big are we talking about?
Immense, for lack of a better word. The most recent studies that have been published by organizations like McKinsey indicate that 1.5 trillion dollars were invested in 2019. That as many as 75% of today's materials used in industry that are normally supplied by the petrochemical industry could be supplied by this new synthetic biology in biomanufacturing world. So the impact, yes, it's like you said, it's pervasive. It's like AI, and definitely is going to be everywhere.
Yeah, the same way we move towards an information economy, if we add that knowledge into living matters, for sure the change can be big. Within, for example, the context of, I was reading recently, if we had, for example, the AIDS pandemic hundreds or 200 years ago, we would just might not have survived it. We didn't have the logistical or the infrastructure or the technological infrastructure, to be able to deal, in a timely fashion with something new like that. And now with COVID-19, we're kind of stretching those technological limits once again. And I'm curious based on the experience, what kind of culture, what kind of infrastructure, or probably even more mindset do we need in order to be able to tackle the next, for example, God forbid, pandemic or or environmental crisis that we have?
It's a complicated question you're asking me. The definitely what the learned experience have been from COVID is that it's showing us that these technologies can have a mega impact, positive impact, and that it requires a different way to think about regulations. It requires a different way to think about adoption. It requires a different way to think about supply chains. So I think that the benefit of this crisis we've had in this pandemic that we're all suffering, and a lot of people are deeply suffering from, is going to be that we're learning how to do this in a different way. But the challenge is still huge because bio, will need to be in existence in all of our economies for sure. But there is risks, and we must face our fears, and our societies must embark on looking at this from multidisciplinary and social impact approach, and that's still a ground that needs much discovering.
Yeah, definitely kind of a different mindset around that. Before we go forward, just remind the audience, we'll go into more specific questions on how we can apply biotech for sure, but we're curious to kind of hear your questions. That's the beauty of doing a live. It's a fantastic tool, and for sure, take some time, ask some questions in the chat. The great thing is we can ask some questions to Xavier-Henri here, but also we can follow up and continue the discussion in the chat. This is such an amazing topic that has so many repercussions. So if you have an idea in your head, don't be shy, just write it down. We'll love to have that conversation with you. So let's continue. When I hear about biotech, for example, or when we hear about it, of course we think about everything, biological living organism, right? As the name implies, but can we talk about biotech outside, let's say, the medical field? What are the other applications?
Yes, and I think your question is brilliant. One of the things that, I'm going to start by maybe explaining one fundamental is that you remember Moore's law?
Yep.
And the whole concept of exponentiating power in computing. I think that Moore's law has happened in biology. That there is a discovery, that's less than 50 years old. That's even probably a lot less than that, where we started to have access to to the software code of life. Anything that's alive, it's got a program, it's got a code in the back. It's called DNA, and we started to be able to go into that big software code. It's not like we have to code it; it's just there, and then we go grab a piece of that code, and we say, okay, well, we can activate or neutralize something that corresponds to that piece of code. And so it's a lot more complex than that. There's a complexity of manufacturing, of scaling, and all that stuff. But that's a fundamental difference. So think about it now that if everything in life is a protein, your hair, wood, CBD, meat. If everything's a protein, that means that we have the ability to engineer just about any protein we think is of use. And so that means that we can have an impact on, it's not that we will, and we're already starting to have an impact on this whole world of materials, in a huge manner. And think of it that McKinsey, the consultants say that 75% of current supplies can be found alternatives for thanks to this science and this technology. Think of it also that there's 10 billion people to feed on the planet soon. When we get to there, where are we going to get all that stuff? And we know we can't be petrochemical based. So we need alternatives. So if everything's a protein, there's hope.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way of looking at it from a broader perspective, saying like, hey, at the moment, if everything's based on code, if we take that approach, and suddenly we're not determined by it, we can play within the code to solve whatever problem we have. You talked about the petrol issues in oil, the fact we can produce it by modifying living organism. Can we use it also for, things that we wouldn't associate to, let's say, something living, like just materials that have no biological component in it, like make superstructures and such?
Yeah, there's already, I met a startup recently that started to create new materials. In other words, materials that behaves in a different way with a different elasticity and a different life cycle and a different, resilience. All that to apply it to skis. So, we can create alternative supplies like Hyacinth. You've heard of Hyacinth Bio in Montreal, one of the first Montreal startups in this whole bioeconomy. They have found a way to enable production of CBD, and that's cool. But we can also do it with many other things, like skis.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So like you have materials, 70% supply. Once you realize it's not just food, although food in itself is already a fantastic way of just looking at that problem. Yeah, that's a very interesting scale. And so, for example, we're talking specifically today about the BioHub and the importance of creating one in Montreal or in general. What impact do you think it will have on our scientific community or entrepreneurs? Was something missing in that field that we needed to create that specific space?
Yeah, for sure. Because any space needs four components. It needs a place for skills and capacity to build exist. It needs an entrepreneurial mindset. It needs funding from our governments, whether it's federal or provincial. It's non-dilutive funding, and it needs dilutive funding, which just comes from VCs and investments. And what we felt is that we needed a catalyzer for all this. We needed to bring these people together. We needed a space, an environment, an ecosystem where all these different elements would collide with a focus on biology. We have in Quebec all the ingredients to embark on the bio revolution. We have already embarked on it, specifically in the pharma world. And because of that is why we have all the elements. We have tons of people trained in biology. We have, great capacities. Look at Concordia with the BioHub, the Genome Foundry, the Genomics Center. Look at the NRC facilities, and I can go on for a long time. We have funding programs from IRAP, NRC, MyTax, so on. So it's there. It's just a question of getting to it. Engage. Let's go.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Sometimes we have this almost issue of too many resources. Sometimes it's empty. Sometimes it's like too many resources, and it makes sense to make it more dense. When you're part of that, you already know what are the next options. Speaking about that, what kind of facilities or programs would entrepreneurs have access in this BioHub besides
Uh,
green grass, which clearly, I have expectations here.
yes, we should. The first and foremost is this important environment where they can actually develop products, because
Hmm.
biology is about assays. Assays meaning that you do procedures so that you can generate a certain content of something in a reliable way, and scaling of all that stuff. But you need to do some early engineering. You need to
Yeah.
do some early validation. The other thing that you need is people that are advisors and experts that know that you're there, that can meet you there. You need leadership skills. You need coaching. Those are all the things that we're providing in that environment to our teams.
So speaking of that coaching, I've been hearing you're spending a bit of time mounting a team of superheroes, of people with actual skill on the field who can, motivate but also provide the structure. Can you tell me a bit more of, who will be the kind of day-to-day face of people who are in that biohub?
Let's use an example. Just before Christmas, we hosted about 10 teams, 10 bio teams, entrepreneurial teams, and very early stage teams.
Hmm.
We got them to meet with Johnson and Johnson Innovation, with Johnson J Labs, with Second News. Sylvain Carl participated. A very well-known Montreal actor. We got them to meet a whole bunch of people, Roche from the pharmaceuticals, and so on, that gave them their vision and their encouragement to go.
Fantastic.
Also, their commitment that when they need help, just call. We'll help.
Oh,
We'll
wow.
come.
Yeah, speaking as an entrepreneur, this is such a motivating thing to hear because you spend a lot of time working on your idea, but then the connection to the real world market, or people in that sphere. A little call me if you're stuck somewhere means literally the world when you're working on your idea and you're stuck, right? So having that space is fantastic. I'm looking at some of the. I have some questions related to that community. So clearly you've been influenced by your experience at District 3. I hear a lot of those values. Can you tell me maybe what is what is needed to build not just the space but that thriving community that maybe we don't put the emphasis enough?
Well, I think we all, the fundamental ingredients of community build, if we're speaking, to that aspect of things,
Hmm.
community, it's first, people need to be inspired. They need to be
Hmm.
inspired by success stories like our friends from Hyacinth Bio, from you've brought some guests today, which are definitely a great story. I think we have Cure Therapeutics, we have Invented Devices, we have a Drop Genie. These people need to be need to testify that what they did is it's a challenge, but it can be done by others as well. The other thing is you need people to meet. All the once you've inspired people, they need to go somewhere and they need to feel that they're not alone, that they can build a team, that they can rely on other teams, that they can work on the peer-to-peer principles. And last but not least, you need them to be, I'm going to bring back the same people that I was mentioning before, industry advisors, experts that
Hmm.
are give them this feeling, okay, what you're telling me makes sense. No, this really doesn't make sense. That doesn't mean you have to listen to everything they say, and you should, please. But you should take into consideration what they're telling you so that you can draw up your own vision of things.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's not just about a space, it's that forward-thinking approach and concrete example. Speaking of that forward-thinking approach, one issue we have, and it's definitely worth talking about it, is the retention. Montreal is such a specific market. I'm pretty sure a lot of ecosystems have that preoccupation too. Of like, hey, biotech has so many applications. Of course, it's almost if it works here, it could easily work in other markets. How do you avoid losing those people so they just move to the next Silicon Valley or whoever has, being acquired and, it just disappears from our ecosystem?
Yeah.
What is
So
kind of your experience here at District 3 and the kind of the best approach?
yeah, it's you talk about a sweet spot here for me. It's great to be helping young teams, come to success, and it's great to see them succeed.
Mm-hmm.
When they end up getting investments from San Francisco, from Boston, I can only cheer and
Yeah, for sure.
applaud. What I do find sad for society though is that we created these fantastic brains, these high power potential teams, and off they are to another part of the world. And so will the values stay with us? I think that we have the ingredients today in Quebec to keep, because we have the skills, we have capacities, we have access to those experts, we have access to pretty unique funding programs from our governments. I think it's time for the VCs to step up, the local VCs. But I think we'll see that come through sectors. I don't think it's going to be like with AI, where it's necessarily an AI focused.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep in mind what you're using the technology for. And so we'll see that the agri and food sector will start, being really looking closely at this bio stuff. So will the renewable resources environment and sustainability people. So will the new materials people. We were talking about materials to make skis or hockey sticks or airplanes.
Yeah, and those are examples where the local market is clearly big enough to keep a young startup busy for a while, within the context that they don't feel threatened by staying, like a missed opportunity. So speaking about that, there's something. Sorry, go ahead.
I must say you're right. At this point, it's time for our locals to step up, because otherwise we're going to produce great teams. It's like in hockey. We're going to produce some of the world's best hockey players, but they're going to be playing for the Canadians. So
yeah, but one thing at the time, but it's definitely true. Those are very interesting pieces to connect. And one thing we like here at the show, what we're building is we have an initiative called the Startup Cafe, and the idea essentially is right after. This show, actually the next day in the morning, Saturday, you grab your 11 o'clock coffee, because you have your own at 10 and another one at 11. That's the world we live in. And the idea is to we'll post a bit more information there, but the idea is to, if this conversation gives you a lot of idea or frustrations and you want to just meet like-minded people to discuss a bit further, because Xavier, maybe you don't realize, but you're unpacking a lot of potential areas of discussion, and there's a limit of what we can do, of course, just by grabbing some audience of the questions from the audience. We'll do a whole cafe, 1 hour. We'll have the link in the comments or displayed, and so don't be shy. That's kind of the next step to push that conversation. But we still have you around. There's still some more questions. Time is running quickly as I'm getting reminded fairly regularly on the chat. So let's do a rapid fire sets of questions. Are you ready?
yeah, let's try this.
Okay. So you know the drill. There's always too many things to unpack. So we have a little idea. We'll go as quickly as possible to some of those questions, right? And you'll have to lead the charge here. Xavier, show the example of how fast we can answer questions. So here we go. Okay, we'll start with a simple one. How long was the Biotech Lab project in the making? When did it start?
2 years ago.
2 years ago? Cool. What inspired you to launch the BioHub, in a few words?
Biotech is the place to be.
It's just like no other option.
No
Okay,
option.
speaking of that, BioHub, is it accessible during pandemic right now?
We're slowly making it accessible. Yes, it's being open right now as we speak.
In 2-3 words, what people can have access to?
They need to apply to see if they can
For
have
sure.
access to the lab and to our coaches and experts.
Okay, well, nice, fantastic. And okay, so you've been working on that. I'm sure you've seen a lot of invoices flying through. What was one of those pieces of equipment that you're like, wait, how much does it cost? And that got you, very surprised. What was it?
I was amazed to understand how expensive it is to build such an environment because of you need to make this very safe.
Oh
There's
yeah.
norms and standards. And so, for example, you would think that, a fume hood's a fume hood, but a fume hood in a certain type of environment is a lot of money.
So give us like one example, if you can.
I was just using the fume hood as an example. But there's, fridges, there is fermentation environments. But the problem is that it's not just one, is there's a lot of this stuff that you
You
need
need
to.
a lot of them. Fantastic. Let's move on. What's the, let's say, right now the technology that you think is the most innovative? Like you'll put your $20 on it for sure anytime.
Biomanufacturing.
Makes sense. Okay, real quick, name me 5 very difficult names of machines or scientific terms that it just makes you struggle every time.
There's too many of them. I can't come up with one.
No. You're not gonna manage to skip this one out. Tell us at least one or two that you're like, why is it so complicated?
You're asking me to come up with names of scientific things that are so complicated to explain?
No, that as you have those discussions with the team, there's some concept of some. It's just ridiculously complex to name.
To name or to explain?
To name.
I'm going to fall back into the world of coaching. I
Yeah.
think the most difficult thing to really truly explain is convincing.
Fantastic. Okay, so look, let's kind of look at audience questions. Dennis, can you display me some?
Hi, my name
Hey,
is
how did
Bianca. I'm currently a student at Concordia's Biotechnology and Genomics Graduate Diploma Program. My question for you today is, what advice would you give to recent graduates or future graduates for getting into the biotechnology industry?
The biotechnology industry is a very, very big field. So the first thing I would do is try to see what my narrower field of interest is. If you're asking me specifically about the startup ecosystem, it's exactly that. I think the word ecosystem is really important to know. You need to be present in the different events. There's events that are actually constructed for people to meet up, and start by going to those, meet up, experience something together with these people so that you can start team building. If that was your question more specifically on the startup part.
Yeah, that makes sense. Start to connect the dots and then it'll help you narrow it down. Okay, second question.
Hi, I'm Quentin. I'm a young scientist in biotechnology in Sherbrooke. And I wonder, what are the main criteria do you look before starting any collaboration with a scientist or a startup? Thank you.
We have different programs for startups. So it really is, where are you at in your journey as a startup? We tend to divide it into, are you into ideation? Are you into validation? Are you post validation, and are you into launch and grow, or are you at scale? So we tend to try to position initiatives within that framework, and from there we then can assess what help you may need, and if we can provide that help, because we can't always provide the help that people need. So we try to do an alignment on that. So that's an answer for the startups. For the scientists, we've been working for a couple of years now in a program in partnership with the Fonds de Recherche du Québec on initiating scientists to entrepreneurship, on then helping them get to the next phase, which is the ideation and the team building, and manage their career while they're starting this in the middle of a doctorate study, and try to get to that postdoc phase where they should be, finish your postdoc for the most cases, then you can go on to your startup life. And we're actually setting up a new program called the postdoc program, which is targeted at scientists.
Yeah, that makes sense. Where are you in your journey right now? And based on that, a whole series of questions and tools opens up. I look at some written question here. how do you think complex topics related? Sorry, how do you think complex topic related to biotech should be presented to public, especially with the popularity of anti-vaxxers for sure and non-GMO advocates?
Oh, you're hitting a lot of subjects all at the same time
Oh
here.
yeah.
The anti-vaxxers are a different population than the non-GMO, and to be very clear, GMO has a history for a reason, and the fact is, SynBio is not GMO. But I'm not going to explain that now. But I think people need to be clear. And one of the things that we're working on is to make tools very easily accessible so that people understand the differences in those definitions. Because yeah, it's definitely a big challenge. And then going back to the presentation of complex topics, I think all of our entrepreneurs that are science-based need to learn, and it's a tough thing. It's part of the training that we do to be able to explain things at different levels, whether it's their science or their business. They need to drill down into details as much as they need to do what we call the elevator pitch. And you know, if you can explain it to your mom and dad, usually that's a good place to start. And friends, you know, it's a good test way to say, did I vulgariser or simplify this enough for me to explain? But it's doable. It's not impossible. It's a question of effort and time spent.
You've actually done it very well just by taking that question and breaking it into pieces. Right? Saying like, we have to separate this and why each one of them exists. James has also a question. Is there a plan to get established industry players in biotech to support companies in the BioHub accelerator to, of course, facilitate collaborations between them and startups? So creating those links with the industry.
Yeah, we started this. Yes, it's in the process. I was using, you know, J&J as an example earlier on, but we work with other groups that are Quebec groups, and we have a whole plan this year. We're actually creating something called so this is a secret kind of announcement, but where Concordia is considering creating something called what we're calling as a code name for now, the Biomanufacturing Institute. And the purpose of this is to unite industry together with startups, together with researchers, academics in general, and to create that place of collision for everyone within a project context structure.
No, it makes sense to align those key players and actually to be able to measure the impact, you know, not just have a series of names. And you know, that's the hard part at the end of the day, converting into maybe it simplifies to have just numbers, but it also allows us to measure the impact and if we're going in the right direction. So of course, if the audience if you have other questions, feel free to write them down. We can address them later on or just in the discussion, right? That video will live on the internet for a tad longer than this live. I'll also take a few seconds to say we have to plug our newsletter, right? In a nutshell, we'll display the link, but if you want to know more about topics like these or events and such, don't be shy. It's a fantastic place to get started. As Xavier talked about, there's a lot of information, and it's all about connecting those little dots and start to be just surround yourself with that information. Okay, let's go to the next section. So essentially, we want to have a different perspective. Of course, right now, Xavier-Henri is pushing for, he's talking about the BioHub, which is in so many ways just encompass so many ideas about how the startups exist in our space and what is the potential of technologies like biotech. But you briefly have a glimpse of Ludovic. So Dennis, I saw that. Just give me a sec, I will come to that. But essentially, the different perspective session, what we want to do is we believe that in order to get that whole picture, and let's face it, we already painted fairly wide, we want to engage with experts from different, to have different perspectives. So today we invited Montreal biotech startup, of course, to join us kind of last minute for the show. So everyone, let's meet two people. The first person is Ludovic. Do you hear me? Ludovic and Joel. Hi. Perfect.
Hey,
It's the
Valentin, how
first
are you
time we
doing?
do that section, so the transition wasn't as smooth as we'd like, but the good news is we're here to talk about biotech, and I heard you've been pretty busy. So Xavier talked about the importance of those elevator pitch. That's definitely part of the District 3 mantra. Okay, let's do that. Who wants to do their 60-second elevator pitch?
I can go ahead actually for the elevator pitch. And I should say we're part of District 3, very happy to be part of District 3. We're working in the BioHub and I'm really excited to hear that District 3 is focusing on biomanufacturing because that's definitely something and a space that we want to actually go into. But in terms of elevator pitch, really to take back the words of Xavier, everything is protein, right? So we work in the space of helping researchers rapidly validate the integrity of biological products like antibodies, like protein. And these are key ingredients in a lot of COVID-19 research. So I'll give you an example. Joelle, who you briefly saw, she's a professor at the University of Montreal. And she does research on protein engineering, and she spends thousands of dollars on these ingredients yearly, right, to buy protein antibodies. And what's very important for Joelle is that she needs a reliable supply of proteins and antibodies. And also, often she has to mix and match different suppliers. Now, the problem is there's a lot of variation from batch to batch from one supplier and obviously across suppliers. And a study found that 3 out of 4 commercial antibodies were mostly not performing as expected. So when you look at it, this is an industry level problem. So Affinity provides a lab like Joelle a solution to quickly test and ensure the quality and integrity of the biologics. Our innovation is based on surface plasmon resonance, so it can deliver a response within minutes compared to traditional techniques like ELISA that can take up to days. And this solution can not only help a research lab in academia, also in CROs and pharma, but also it address issues. It can address issues upstreams in the bioproduction in terms of the quality control, and it touched a little bit on what Xavier was talking about a little bit earlier.
Yeah, that makes sense. So B2B saying like you waste too much time right now and risk too much in the variation of your proteins, let's say providers, and you want to stabilize, you want to remove that risk. I have a question in that case for Joelle. What do you wish you kind of knew when you started that business venture? Because of course there's a part that you work on the tech itself, but there's also a whole part which is the business itself. What was kind of a today's Joelle advice for past Joelle when she started that?
Well, I'm not sure I would change anything. I think that I was a researcher with a need. I was representative of many other researchers having the same need, so I knew what that need was. That's my role, and I had never started up a business, and I think it's a hard road, it's a long road, and you have to learn as you go. But mostly, it's about individuals. It's about having the correct individuals who are helping and filling out all the aspects where you just don't know. You have to be a team. So what I want to know now, there's too much. I think you just go in with your energy and get a great team.
I like that. It's all about the process. It's like there's not a case where you can know everything. It's just get in there and kind of trust your team, yourself. It's great that you mentioned team. People often see that as a me myself. I have to fight against our army. And in practice, it's all about doing it in the context of a team in that environment. Speaking of those environments, a place like a BioHub wants to simplify that collaboration, help startups expand. What is the potential of a specific location like the BioHub that didn't exist, in the past here, at least in Montreal? What do you think it will help and simplify in the future?
Yeah, I'll take that question. First, I should say that we really miss, again, Xavier was talking about collision, a space to talk to other entrepreneurs, to investors, people in the space. I mean, we really miss that interaction right now due to COVID. And obviously, health's first. So having a space like the BioHub where you can go in, and really be hands-on. I mean, science, startups, it's really a hands-on endeavor. And going there, having the opportunity to have access to a lab, have access to very expensive resources that usually, it would be very difficult to have access to, and be able to test, validate an idea, sometimes an idea that you have, sometimes an idea that comes from a potential customer, and be able to do that demonstration, which is really key, right? And that's one part of the equation. And I think that the other part is having an ecosystem or other companies, other people with whom you can either validate ideas quickly or equally important, kill them quickly.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that's, as we said, it's part of that process. Going back to this space, since we have Xavier with us, what is this kind of, what should the BioHub look towards in order to, what kind of resources, what kind of support, help, coaching, at least in your experience right now, you as Affinity Instruments, as a moral entity, what is the thing that by far is the main objective on your radar, like the kind of help and support you need? Where should it be aiming at right now?
Yeah, I mean, first in terms of support, I would just simply say that we got a lot of great support from District 3, and I would say especially mentoring. Our mentor at Affinity Instruments is Edna Chosag, and she's been wonderful. We've been with her for a certain time now, and it's just very good to have an honest opinion about your ideas, your strategy, where you want to go. And part of what we really need as a company to grow and to scale. I mean, I would just turn back to a little bit of our philosophy and to say that, as a startup, we're limited in resources, but definitely not limited in terms of ideas and really what we want to achieve. So we always start with the position of, what's best if we want to hire the top talent, work with the top suppliers, and jump on, great opportunities local and abroad. And with that perspective, we lay out our goals, and then we do what's right, and not necessarily look at what's going to be a return in a very short term. And what we're looking for at the moment is also investors who are excited in building, working with a company that is exciting to build a very strong ecosystem, push forward exciting technology, and they want to do it because it's the right thing to do, right? So that's what we're looking for, and that's what we do.
And maybe the other side of that question, there are things for which a BioHub or any kind of place like that can help entrepreneurs, but there are things that they cannot help you, right? It's the limits, that is your own path that you have to do by yourself. So maybe for Joël, what are things that a space like BioHub or any incubator or accelerator just cannot help you with? That's definitely, it's your own fight.
Well, of course, basic research has to be done in a different area, a different arena, and it's complementary to what is done with respect to the innovation, the engineering that can be done in the BioHub. What's fantastic about spaces like the BioHub is really to meet people who will feed you the ideas that you didn't even know it existed. So particularly for us, some engineering ideas can be really, really propel us forward in ways that we wouldn't even have thought of. So this is, I think, they're very distinct spaces, and if without something like the BioHub, you just can't go there alone, not as a researcher.
Yeah, it's true. It starts there, and it's a good reminder saying like those locations are there to help you, but you have to bring some work in there with you when you start, and there's also limits within that. You live it?
And I would add an extra point. Actually, there's both sides. I mean, Joël covered the part of research that you need to do a lot of proof of concept and then expand on it. I think that the other part of the equation is commercialization, right? Like you often don't need to wait until you have a perfect product to go out. Like, dealing with a market, presenting your company, talking to people, talking to investors, talking to potential customer, knocking at doors, having doors close on your face. All these things are like, real things you have to address as soon as possible, because it's the whole continuum that you have to cover from proof of concept, product development, commercialization to make something that is successful. So I think that the BioHub is certainly an important part, moving from proof of concept towards commercialization. But also there's this whole other part that as a company you have to go through your network, you have to do your due diligence, you have to do your business development. That's
And
very
Yeah, and
important.
I would back up, I back up both, but I highlight specifically what was just said now, what Ludovic was saying. The in the world of science, product development is not something that happens instantaneously. It's not, I'm not putting up an app and I can, have 4 coders work 24 hours a day for the weekend and boom, they pop up something. It just doesn't work that way in biology, specifically, but in deeper science in general as well. And so that doesn't mean that you should be in your lab. You need to get out of the lab and you need to go out and see your clients. You need to animate your ecosystem. You need to get them to be ready to be adopting your product. And so it's a big journey. It's a very intense one. Sometimes a very frustrating one, as Ludovic was mentioning. You get doors slammed in your face, but you also get doors open that you never would have thought would have opened as well. So
yeah, getting out of your lab. And maybe before we go to the next section, I have one question. It's a tricky one in the world of startups. Everybody wants to succeed, and Xavier, definitely want your experience there. Is there such thing as going too fast?
You're asking me the question?
Yeah. So, for example, have you seen cases of like fantastic ideas, but the cruising speed is slightly too fast for the team, and it's not going towards good?
What you bring up is a thematic that is often talked about in the world of innovation. Is your market ready to adopt you?
Is your the team ready to deal with all the changes too? Right.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not just research anymore. It's clients, business. Growing a team, hiring people. Is that something that startups are ready?
Well, it's think of it, COVID right now. Look how much this whole event has accelerated the adoption of us being on Zoom today, right? And so not Zoom, sorry, I used the wrong name, to be on video live. And so within that context, that's been great benefit for a lot of people. And it's the same in any innovation space. Is your market ready for you? And that's one of the things you need to get out of the building for. You need to see what is it that they're ready for. And they're not necessarily ready for what you thought of, but maybe they're ready for something else you can provide.
Yeah, just to stay a bit faster. And yeah, it's true. Don't always wait around, right? Okay, let's go to the next section. Time is flying surprisingly fast. I'm very curious. If you have to nominate someone, let's say the next person we should talk to, have on the show, that if people are interested in biotech, who should they, read about, watch their video, a conference, read a book? That's just your little time to say, hey, that person needs just a bit more spotlight. Who would that be?
I would bring in Vince Martin. He's a chief scientific officer of District 3, but that's not why I'm bringing him on. Vince has a very unique journey. He was actually in Silicon Valley at the early stages of his career. He was a co-founder of a very successful biotech firm called Amyris in just outside San Francisco. And he's also the co-founder of the Genomic Center of Concordia. He just founded and created the whole Genome Foundry environment, which is of huge value for our bio innovators. And I think Vince has a very unique perspective on this journey of science, entrepreneurship, the realities of what that means.
So what tough question, because when you do those interviews, some questions better the answer, some are a bit more tricky. What tough questions should we ask him about? What
tough questions should you ask Vince? You're going to get me into trouble. I can't answer that question. Vince is going to kill me.
So safe. Come on, you can do it.
I think you should ask Vince, how does one choose to be more a researcher, more a hands-on innovator, and thus entrepreneur?
Interesting. Ludovic, do you have something in mind?
In terms of nomination, I would just maybe put the spotlight on another company, a startup in Montreal that is called Nuvio. They work on developing different microfluidic systems for neuro and cell growth, and it's very exciting. They work in the neuroscience space. So Hugo Maguire is the guy to talk to, and I think.
And what is the tricky question that Hugo is the right person to be challenged with?
Well, I would say that's something you better ask him. What would be a tricky question?
Safe.
I wouldn't get into this one.
Okay, okay. I have higher expectation for you, Joël. Think of somebody that we should put the spotlight on.
I have to say that Xavier scooped me. The first name I instantly thought of is Vince Martin. I've known him for even longer than you, Xavier. And he brought so much to Montreal. And indeed, his biofoundry is amazing. Graduates from my lab keep going to work in his lab because it's such a fantastic place. And I think the really tough question to ask.
Here, yeah. Because, so far it's the same name, so you have to surprise us with the tough question.
I don't think it's much of a surprise, but I would ask about time management. Because indeed, this is something already being an innovator is so time consuming, and to be a researcher also in a big team, it's very demanding. So how do you make those choices? What do you prioritize? And or how do you create links between what you're doing as basic research and as potential commercialization?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's this whole thing I see when people go through that journey. At some point, if you do research or if you do marketing or if you do business, whatever you do, at some point you're transitioning towards other things that take you time, and sometimes that takes people by surprise. So thank you all for your time. I'll close that round, but I've heard some names here more than once, so I'm definitely curious to get in touch with them, and we'll write them down in the chat for those who are probably as me as curious to get more info on them. Thank you, Ludovic. Thank you, Joël, so much, and we wish you, Xavier, what should we wish them for?
Perseverance. Keep going.
Perseverance. Okay, perseverance is a fantastic way of looking at it. So thank you, and yeah, perseverance then. So Xavier, we have just a few minutes left. I know you have a busy schedule, and I do appreciate your time. Tell me, I'm pretty sure people are watching by now, and I see the numbers are still up. Where people should go, or where should people be looking forward to? So, for example, for the BioHub, how do they connect with you and the BioHub?
The simplest is to connect through our website and Facebook page. I mean, we're very present in the social media space.
Fantastic.
And the first place I would go is there, and then there's different ways to apply through to connect either through events or through applications or just information, and just ask. And then we have a lot of people. District 3 is a team, and there's very much a culture of, whoever wants to come in and ask a question, we're here to answer your question.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's true. I'm glad you picked up on social media cues, and it is true. It's Dennis just put up one of the pictures there. You're very active there with a fairly successful strategy. So fantastic way of getting in touch. Xavier, thank you so much for your time. I truly wish you the best, and as you said, perseverance, because there will be definitely some new challenges along the way. So the advice still applies to you too. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Perfect. And the show is coming to an end. I know, but little messages before we're done. So first of all, please make sure to hit the like button. I look at the numbers. You're still around. Like, you have to realize this is fairly unique. Often in social media, things move so ridiculously fast, and the only thing I'm asking you for all that content that took way longer than you probably think to create with the team. I'm definitely just the face here, but there's like a little army of people who worked hard, and just do one thing, super simple one. It's to click that like button. Well, the one right under, not on the picture, of course, because it signals all the right algorithm to do their job. So if you like that content, if you think that it brings some interesting perspective, two things: click that like button, and also, honestly, chat. Having likes is one thing, but what we really care about, what we really strive for, is meaningful discussions. You've seen it through those interviews. That's why we took the time to get all those perspectives. Of course, speaking of that discussion, the Innovator Cafe is coming up. We're gonna try. It's the first time we have that. It's tomorrow, so Saturday at 11 a.m. So Montreal New Tech is hosting this one. It's for the community, and we're gonna chat about, as you can guess, biotech. If you're interested in following up on this topic, if you would like us to join for a casual chat, make sure to let Simran know in the comments. You've probably seen her hovering around. And of course, thank you for tuning in to Innovator, powered by Montreal New Tech. We should probably change the tone for that second part, but we hope you enjoyed the show, and we wish you truly, from me and especially my team, a wonderful day. See you in the interwebs and in the comment section. Take care.